that some of us have been praying for our General Assembly throughout, before, during, and I'd like to offer it now because the work of the General Assembly, the work of the church continues. And one of the things I'm going to be urging you all to do is to continue working in the governing body level and having presbyteries struggle with these issues. So where I am praying General Assembly, you can think your presbytery or your session. Let us pray. Almighty God, in Jesus Christ, you called disciples, and by the Holy Spirit made them one church to serve you. Be with the members of our General Assembly, our presbyteries, our sessions. Help them to welcome new things you are doing in the world and to respect old things you keep and use. Save us all from empty slogans or senseless controversy. In our deciding, determine what is good for us and for all people, editorial edition, and your creation. As this General Assembly meets, as our presbyteries meet, as our session meets, let your Spirit rule, so that our church may be joined in love and service to Jesus Christ, who has gone before us and is coming to meet us in the promise of your kingdom. And all God's children say, Amen.
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 If you like that prayer, that's adapted from the Book of Common Prayer, our official Presbyterian prayer book. So tonight, I'm going to give a few minute overview of some things from the Presbyterian from Earth Care perspective as the moderator. I'd ask you all to mute yourselves at this point. Then after my talk, I'd like to call on Sue Smith, who co-authored and nurtured and guided a very important paper that was several years in the making. In some ways was the most important, thoughtful report that came out. And then after Sue, we'll have Jed talk about the Presbyterian Tree Fund and also perspectives having served on the Environmental Justice Committee. And then Nettie will bring it home. Nettie was also a commissioner to this assembly, is on the staff of Green Faith, and is either chair or co-chair, I keep forgetting, of the Presbyterian Hunger Program Advisory Committee that includes overseeing our church's work in environmental justice. So we've got, I think, a good lineup of people for you here. I'm going to just give you a few brief things I wanted to highlight for you. First is the context in which all this is taking place. I mentioned the report that we had from Phoenix to Boston with extreme heat warnings. If you didn't hear it, didn't see it, this is, well, that's the one I wanted to show. First, the paper today had the news, just horrendous heat descending on Western Europe, 104 in England. And you have to remember, they don't have air conditioning there. They're not conditioned to it. They don't know what to do with it. I want to highlight this headline. Are you seeing that? I don't think you are. On Monday, there was a meeting in preparation for the COP27 meeting in Egypt next year. And those who were meeting were addressed by the United Nations Secretary General. And this is the headline: warns that humanity faces collective suicide over the climate crisis. That this is getting more and more serious by the people who carefully study it. They have no political agenda other than wanting us to get through all of this, and we all need to be working on it. I just also want to, if you didn't see the highlight of the author here, his first name is Jesus. So listen to Jesus and do what we can. I'm going to be urging you all to consider being commissioners to the next General Assembly, because that assembly is very important. And we found this assembly, we were lacking in people to be advocates for the environment. There just weren't enough people who had background and understanding. So I want you all to go to Salt Lake City, but I also want to be giving you a heads up. This is a major report that came out. As the Great Salt Lake dries up, Utah faces an environmental nuclear bomb. Climate change, rapid population growth are shrinking the lake, creating a bowl of toxic dust that could poison the air around Salt Lake City. I'm sure that's enticing you all to agree to be commissioners. The timeline may not affect General Assembly in 2 years, but I fear it may be getting worse before it gets better. This General Assembly that just finished had over 30 presbyteries overturing to ask the General Assembly to consider different aspects of how we deal with climate change. So there is plenty of grassroots support for it. The divesting from fossil fuels got the major media attention. We're going to be looking at other actions primarily this evening. We already did a webinar on divestment, and we want to encourage people to go to the presentations that Fossil Free Peace USA will be planning, I'm sure, sometime in the future. Our steering committee said basically at a recent meeting, we want to follow their lead and concentrate on some other aspects of how to respond to climate change. A couple of things that didn't get as much attention was an overture that was passed that called upon churches to really evaluate their carbon footprint and intentionally explore ways to lower that. And PEC is committed to that. One of our steering committee members is the executive director for the Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light. And if you're familiar with that organization, they've done a lot of resourcing of churches on lowering their carbon footprint. And I think it's called Cool Congregations. We're going to be taking their materials and linking to it. We don't believe in reinventing the wheel, but we're going to do a major push in encouraging congregations to lower their carbon footprint. That's at the local grassroots level. Another significant action by the General Assembly was, you've heard for the last several years, we've had the Matthew 25 emphasis that looks at racial justice, congregational vitality, poverty, and economic justice, those three. They're expanding those to 6 emphasis, and one of them will be climate change. So that hopefully will have implications at the national church level and also at our grassroots as well. I would just go back to divestment briefly. On the PEC website, I had a link to the Sojourners article from yesterday. Bill McKibben, who is a well-known environmental activist, is calling for us to look at what we do with our banks, where we put our money. And sometimes that money will be used for fossil fuel issues that we definitely want to have, want to make sure we take on and put our money in better uses. Those are just 2 ones that I think at the grassroots and also at the national church level we need to hold up and be mindful of. Sue Smith has been a longtime activist and member of Presbyterians for Earth Care. I think she served as vice moderator at one point. She has co-chaired and co-authored, if not the main author, of the Investing in a Green Future, a very significant study paper that was approved by our General Assembly. It went through a challenging experience in that there were suggestions of changes that fortunately got removed by the Assembly as a whole, but a very important document. And Mindy, if you could put the link to that in the chat, that would be helpful. You can find all of the overtures at PC Biz and go to committees, click environmental justice, and then there's what they call action summary. And you'll see the final wording of all of the overtures, the votes by the Assembly on those. Sue Smith, if you could take it away, and we will focus on you as the speaker so people don't get a chance to see each other until we're done with the 2 other speakers.
Okay, so I wasn't quite sure, Bruce, what you wanted, but here I am. I currently serve as the co-chair of the Advisory Committee on Social Witness Policy. I actually was treasurer of Presbyterians for Earth Care for about 6 years, so
Bless you.
I've been around. But anyway, the 200, and so I'm just going to talk about the policy that AC SWAP brought to the General Assembly this time. We were directed by the 223rd Assembly, which was in 2018, to bring an update to the energy policy, and to also include things for congregations as well as for advocacy. And so there is one is we would recommend the whole paper for study by congregations. And I don't know if you'll let me share a screen at one point, I can show you a couple of things you could probably use for it. But what we did, so we have some stuff with congregations, like trying to get congregations, one, to study this paper, two, to try and get to, renewable energy by 2030, or even if that means investing in renewable energy. But we also directed within the Presbyterian Church. So we included, even though the mission agency has decided to include climate change in Matthew 25, we also directed them to include climate change in Matthew 25. We also directed the mission responsibility through investment people to start talking to insurance companies so that they don't insure new fossil fuel projects, and for banks not to fund them. And they actually started that. See, this paper came 2 years ago and it got referred up. So there was some reading of it and trying to do some of that stuff. And then there's a lot of stuff about advocacy in there, and some of it generally is at the national level, but some of it can be done at any level, right? So your church can even do stuff at the local level. And the other thing this paper really tried to do is to start to integrate environmental justice with racial justice, social justice, economic justice, and environmental justice, because that's sort of been a piece that's been missing. I mean, we think it's sort of been missing. Like you'll see overtures or something that say, we will look out for the least of these. And then we go on with these big capitalist solutions that don't really help all that much. So there was there's some of that as well. And so I'm not sure.
So just let you know, you do have screen privileges if you want to show anything.
Oh, okay. So, I don't know if you want any story about what went on in GA, but we actually had one thing for the Washington office that said to stop fracking, because believe it or not, we did not have good policy to say anything about fracking. And we said something about stopping or halting pipelines as well. But there was a gentleman who had worked 40 years in the industry, and he changed those two things to look at. And like, I have nothing against looking at safety features around these things, but like, if you don't frack, there's not a safety feature to worry about. But anyway, so anyway, the environmental committee did change it, but then we found a commissioner who was willing, who you will hear from later tonight, who was willing to try and get the original language restored. And that did happen at the assembly. And I think the only there was 2 reports that requested as part of the work. So the AC SWAP's been directed again to look at two reports to do. So as far as, let's see if I can do this. What? How come I'm not seeing my stuff here? Maybe I can't show it. I don't think I can show it easily, Bruce. But anyway, if you look at this piece of business in PC Biz, which is Environment 02, number 02, it's called Investing in a Green Future, a Vision for a Renewed Creation. So for those who've been around a long time, Leslie Woods, who used to be in the Washington office, did a lot of work on this paper. But if you scroll to the very bottom, there's
Liz, we did put the link to the PC Biz in the chat. So
yeah, and I opened them
Lindy's got
on
that.
my.
So, but I'm just saying.
I opened them, but I'm not sure why it's not showing when I try to share the screen.
You want Mindy or me to show the overture?
Yeah, I guess so. What I want is to go, yeah, if you go into PC Biz and there's like 4 versions of the recommendation because, you know, AC Swap sent a version, the committee sent a version, some, you know, the General Assembly sent a version, and then there was the last thing. But we have 2 resources at the very bottom. There are additions to, they're not embedded within the report. They're at the very bottom.
Good
And
points.
there's,
We need to run over to Target before it gets too late.
And
Alrighty.
probably mute when you're talking about going to Target. Okay.
One is we call it an appendix, I think, and it's a whole list of resources that you can use at your congregational level. You know, there's the other reports. So I will say that this report did not replace Restoring Creation for Ecology and Justice or The Power to Share. It builds on them. So they sort of still stand in place, but we added things that weren't sort of top of agenda back though then, and as I say, this intersectional work. So I don't know, have you found it, Bruce?
Yeah, but I think I'm blocked from screen sharing for some reason.
Okay. The other thing that's in there, it's just nice. It's a poster that was done the last time that sort of shows all the work that's been done in the Presbyterian Church around environmental work, and it's really amazing at how much work's been done over the past 50 years with environmental work. But that's sort of my story, unless there's questions, Bruce.
Well, we're gonna hold the questions probably to the end, so that way we get to hear from the 2 other people. But Mindy, can you pull up the PC Biz overture?
Yeah,
report?
let me do that. I was just, we had some latecomers who needed the link, so I was paying attention to my email. Hold on just a second. I'll see if I can pull it up.
We had like 150 people sign up for this. Now, not all of them are with us. Some people sign up so that they can then, we will send you all an email blast with this on YouTube. And many people know that, so they sign up knowing they can't be with us, but then they can do it later. So, and you're all able to share it later. The reason we asked you to register so we could have your email and then be able to send you the link. So
Actually, I can share it, Bruce. Oh,
Go
somebody
for it.
else is sharing it.
Go for it.
I think Mindy's sharing it.
Well,
Do you want me to get back off of it, or do you want me to leave it up?
we'll let her control it by sharing.
Okay,
it.
all right, I'll close mine. No problem. Okay, go ahead.
And the
Yeah.
link for this is in the chat for everyone.
Okay, so this is the first thing I was talking about. It's an appendix at there, and sort of, it just shows all the places with environmental. It's like a resource sheet that you could use. So it has the different policies that we have, some of the major overtures that have come through the General Assembly, sort of programs that are out there, including, you know, included the latest Blessed Tomorrow information, and then sort of some resources that will help you. So that's just something that's just a resource for congregations if they do want us to study this stuff more. And then this is just kind of whoops. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not the greatest on Zoom. Here we go.
There's not
Here we
gonna
go. Here we go. So there's a nice, you know, if you want a poster, and I think, and it sort of shows what the different agencies have done over time. You know, it's just another resource thing. And then this current resource is justiceunbound.org/50 green years. That's basically, well, I have to go back and check now, but that's basically the same thing as the appendix. So if you have this, it's a way to get there. So those are kind of the resources that go with the report.
Sue, we are trying to recruit a variety of gifted people, including folks that are teaching elders or uh, church educators. Do you have plans to have a discussion guide for that? Would you like us to recruit somebody to do it pro bono, or, I mean?
I don't know. That is one thing that keeps coming up around AC swap work is study guides and ways to use it. It didn't happen with this, but hey, if there's someone who wants to do it pro bono, you know,
It would be a gift to the greater church, right?
it would be.
And I know if we do provide resources for how to lead discussions on it, it's more likely to have discussions on it. So let's see if we can, maybe somebody on the screen tonight would like to volunteer. But too much is given, like training in Christian education and teaching, much is expected. Write a study guide for, for this important report. Well, like I said, we'll wait till the end for other questions. Let's move on to where it's a cool 63 degrees in Lima, Peru. Jed, can you tell us about the Presbyterian Tree Fund?
Thanks, Bruce. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jed Cobal. I'm a mission co-worker in Peru. I've been here since 2009, working with our global partner called Red Uniendo Manos, or the Joining Hands Network, which is a network of NGOs and churches addressing root causes of hunger in Peru. I served this year as a mission advisory delegate to the 225th General Assembly, and I was on the Environmental Justice Committee, which has been referred to, the GA itself is being referred to as an historic GA, and our committee is also being referred to as an historic committee, in particular because of its leadership. It was the first committee ever moderated by a Spanish-speaking person. So, and I mention that because it brings to light a reality in our conversations around environmental justice, around climate change, and many other issues. In that not only are we learning about issues, as many on the committee were learning very rapidly about environmental issues, we're also learning across cultures and languages and looking at these issues from distinct vantage points. And so this Presbyterian Tree Fund, which the Assembly approved, was born, the concept was born here in Peru. And in many ways because of folks who were looking at the issue of climate change from a distinct perspective. Back in 2014, the COP20 was held here in Lima, Peru. And we, alongside of the COP20, we held a conference with our partners, and we invited around climate change, and we invited Presbyterians, and we had a group of 20 or 30 Presbyterians who came down, and folks from Bolivia came over, and we were a large-sized group studying and addressing issues of climate change for about a week. But during that time, and I believe a couple of you who are on the call here might have actually been on that trip. But during that time, one of our partners kind of made an offhand comment, somewhat jokingly saying, wow, all these Presbyterians who are so interested in addressing climate change, and yet they've flown all the way down here generating all these carbon emissions. You know, it was a joke he was making, but it stuck with me. Think, yeah, you know what, we do kind of need to look at our lifestyle, because our lifestyles are different. I began to study my own personal lifestyle, and using carbon calculators online, and realized my biggest impact is my travel by far and away. And my lifestyle, my work prior to the pandemic had me flying in Peru 20 to 30 times a year. And short flights going up, you know, to high altitudes actually generates quite a lot of carbon emissions. And I began to think there's something wrong when I'm flying to these places, because I'm concerned about the impact of climate change, and yet I'm, you know, contributing in a substantial way on a personal level. this conversation began to take, we began to have this conversation with folks, other Presbyterians who are regularly coming to visit us over the years, also wanting to address climate change and help our partners who are beginning to do some work in reforestation, among some other issues, and saying, how, what more can we do? And begin to say, we got to look at our lifestyle as one piece of many pieces, but we do need to look at our lifestyle. And so the concept was born for looking first at folks like myself who are traveling for work and, as a Presbyterian employed by Presbyterian Mission Agency, the work requires me to travel. So what can we do to offset those carbon emissions? And so a concept was born within the Peru Mission Network. Rebecca Barnes from the Hunger Program was very helpful to us in constructing that and figuring out ways. She recommended a carbon calculator for us as well. But the idea is it's a carbon offset program for the Presbyterian Church. There are many carbon offset programs out there, but our thought was, well, if we have our own carbon offset program, could we then not use funds to support global partners, both around the world as well as in the U.S., who are doing hands-on work in around carbon sequestration, whether that is appropriately done forestation or other forms of carbon sequestration. That's the idea. Tree Fund, the name tree just got placed on there because people like trees, and trees are in the Bible. And so the Presbyterian Tree Fund, but it's our carbon offset program for the denomination. Certainly will be, so PMA will adopt this, and they will be setting aside a piece of their budget, of their travel budget, that will go to this fund every year. But the idea is that it doesn't just stay within PMA, that it becomes denominational wide, that this is promoted for all Presbyterians, especially for Presbyterian events like GA, like, whatever conference you may be going to this summer or throughout the year, for Presbyterian meetings, not just air travel, car travel as well. Ways in which we can kind of calculate, what are our carbon emissions through travel, and can we chip in $5 here, $10 there towards this fund. And over time, if this goes wide enough, could create a substantial fund that could support communities that really need the finances to be able to do the work of carbon sequestration that they're doing, whether in the global South or in the US. So that's what it is in a nutshell, and it was approved overwhelmingly by the Assembly. I'll turn it back to you, Bruce, if you wanted to share any more about that.
I put in the chat an article on the denominational website, the link to it, that basically features the movie that you did with one of the people in Peru. And and it also has a link, I believe, to the actual fund where people can send money into it. We are challenging the General Assembly commissioners who voted for this to contribute to it. Since, their way was paid by our denomination through the per capita, it would be nice if they could symbolically make a donation to it. I also put into the chat some helpful bits of information from Rebecca Barnes on where there are calculators. So if people want to figure out, my wife and I drove from New York State down to Maryland for a meeting here, but we had a hybrid car, so we had some savings and not as much. But it was, I think, $2 or $3. So we're not talking lots of money. But if we get 1 million Presbyterians doing it, that adds up pretty quickly. I've got a brother right now in Alaska who got there from Delaware, so I'm going to see if I can hit him up for donations for the Tree Fund as well. I have been trading texts with Rebecca Barnes. Some of you are familiar with the Living Waters of the World, wonderful organization it's a Presbyterian mission organization that does water projects all over the world. And I was thinking, and they do a vacation Bible school curriculum. And I was thinking maybe we could do a vacation Bible school curriculum for Presbyterian Tree Fund and give examples in Peru and maybe an inner city in the United States, and a variety of examples. And kids could study the Bible, trees in the Bible, which are in the from the first page of Genesis to the last chapter of Revelation, there are trees in there. So they could do Bible study, they could learn about the missions, and they could probably even plant a few trees during the week of VBS. So anyway, we're exploring that possibility. Okay, Nettie, why don't you take it away as another General Assembly Commissioner, also one who is actively serving our church in the Hunger Program Advisory Committee, as well as on the staff of Green Faith, and soon to be teaching out at PSR in California. I saw her earlier, so speak up, Ned.
I'm here. Thank you.
Good.
Well, thank you, Bruce. It's beautiful and a blessing to be with all of you. Thank you for creating this space for a conversation. Well, I'm still also reflecting about my experience at GA, so I thank you for this opportunity to kind of put some thoughts together that I could share with you. I was chosen as a commissioner from the Tampa Bay Presbytery to be part of the Immigration Committee. And of course, while I am an immigrant to the US, since I do work most of my time with climate and environmental issues, I wasn't sure that my role at the Immigration Committee would be that meaningful, or at least not as meaningful as I thought it would probably be if I was selected to be part of the Environmental Justice Committee, but thank goodness I was wrong. I did have a meaningful experience. I learned a lot and I appreciated my participation. I learned about our denomination, how it makes decisions at GA, what are some of our challenges, the precious work of moderators, the advisory and the ecumenical delegates. I learned about the diversity of opinions and worldviews within our own denomination, church members. But one thing that struck me the most, I think, is the fear too that I also perceive, the concern, the real concern by many who spoke, pastors and church members, against some of the resolutions, some of the overtures that did end up passing, including the divestment of these 5 fossil fuel companies, including immigration. And I believe that while we made progress in a lot of areas that I felt that really the Spirit moved us in that direction, and I was in agreement with, it is also true that we do need to keep working and to make sure that church members and pastors of these small congregations who may be more conservative than I have all the tools they need to engage their congregation in these difficult conversations. And so, yes to study guides, yes to many other opportunities, yes to the work of PC, yes to the work of the Red Latina to continue providing space for conversation and to help the whole church move in the direction that we feel the Spirit is moving us to bring justice to the world. In the Immigration Committee, the roadblock for passing the resolution for the Presbyterian Church to becoming a sanctuary and accompaniment church was not about finding what was the best and the right way of, give justice to immigrants or reparations to climate refugees, but it was really about the survival of our small congregations and their pastors. And that's when the question came forth for our committee to consider, whom are we protecting when we decide to water down our rhetoric against declaring ourselves a sanctuary church? Who are we protecting? Even after everything that had been shared, it was clear that it wasn't those people whom we are called to protect as a Matthew 25 church that we were concerned about, but it was really our congregations. And so it just leads me to realize that we do need to continue reminding ourselves and our denomination that the church does not exist for its own sake. We are our brother's keepers. We are keepers of future generations too. And then, of course, I saw this same concern and dynamic playing out when we could not pass a categorical divestment resolution. Or neither when the Policy and Procedures Committee also struggled with the question about whether or not the Board of Pension should have the freedom to invest our funds on fossil fuel companies, or are they required to allow, to always follow the mandate of General Assembly? While a few of us tried to debate this issue at the floor of the General Assembly, we were not called to speak, so we missed the chance. And unfortunately, also a person that had been part of the committee said that they unanimously had voted to disapprove the overture, although the reality is that it passed 17 against 12 people, and they had very long debates in that committee about this particular issue. So so we did not have a chance to talk. So it was left at that, in my understanding, that the Board of Pension is not required to follow the mandates of General Assembly, but does choose to do so to their best capability for the good of their clients. And the clients, not the church or General Assembly, but the pensioners. Even if some of us as pensioners or future pensioners do not want fossil fuel invested retirement money. So, you know, there's a lot there, more work to be done, or just to be vigilant and make sure that all the places where our funding goes to is invested in right and just ways, as we had decided at General Assembly. But I also want to point out that I saw a lot of hope for the future of the Presbyterian Church. And I want to say that it was in the votes of the young people. Even though their votes did not count, I could tell that I think that it is not far, that we are not far from passing a categorical divestment. And that is also why I believe why later during the environmental justice debates, we were also able to pass, I think quite quickly, the resolution that included a saying no to fracking and putting that back into the overture and no to new pipelines. The young people spoke very passionately, and I think that the church heard. And I think we need more of their voices somehow. We need to hear more of their voices. So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. And I very seriously consider every time looking at their votes to consider my own vote. So that's hope, and that's beautiful. One final reflection about General Assembly that I would like to share is related to our emphasis on reducing our carbon footprint and focusing narrowly on our energy use and our energy choices. And this leads me to the scriptural passage that we have for a couple of Sundays on July 31st on Luke 12. Where a young man asked Jesus to talk to his brother and to advocate for his right to his inheritance. And Jesus instead gives him a lesson about the problem of greed. And this reflection also was ignited by a question that a white Presbyterian pastor asked me last week. And he said, you know, can the United States really continue at the level of abundance and comfort it currently has if we only use renewable sources? Can the US continue at the level of abundance and comfort it currently has if we only use renewable sources? And of course, the conversation was around the concern with climate change and considering renewable energy, both in our daily lives and also in the production and transportation of the goods that the market offers us every day. So his question led me to realize that while renewable energy is very important, and it is the only kind of energy that we should use, we must also harmonize our consumption with the capacity of the earth and its people to provide what is needed for the well-being of the people and all creatures with whom we share this planet. And this requires a cultural change, a culture change. That perhaps it is more complicated than passing policies to make sure that everybody has access to clean energy. We must reduce our consumption too. As you know, we have so much food, and 30 to 40% of our food goes to waste or rots, while millions of people are still hungry. We determine the fashion for the rest of the world, but those who provide the raw materials do not have access to the same products. They can't pay for it. Even if we all use sustainable energy sources, if we don't change our consumption, we will continue as today, and I quote here, that being less than 5% of the world's population, we use a third of the world's paper, a quarter of the world's oil, 23% of the world's coal, 27% of the world's aluminum, 19% of the world's copper. Our capita use of energy, metals, minerals, forest products, fish, grains, meat, and even fresh water dwarfs that of people in the developing world, end quote. One thing that became clear in the Immigration Committee is how much US history, and I will put in parentheses here, consumption is it's part responsible for the root causes that cause migration. And this migration that is causing issues and affecting our borders. For the production of the goods that we use and the market gives us each day, we have benefited from a system that for more than 400 years has thrived on the exploitation of people and lands. We are using more than is ours and even future generations to come. So as you know, if every citizen in the world decides tomorrow that they want to live the way we do, we would need 4 planet Earths, and we don't have 4 planet Earths. And just as the Earth cannot sustain such consumption, there's neither any government out there that can indefinitely maintain the people inside or maintain the peace of their people when they suffer from lack of resources, because they have gone up to the north and to satisfy our wants. So, and that's why people are migrating. So as Sue Smith also mentioned earlier, the fact of really talking about the connection between environmental justice, racial justice, social justice in holistic terms is very important for our work. It's not enough to feed the hungry and give clothing to the cold, but we don't acknowledge why they're cold and why is it that they're hungry or don't have money to pay for their food. Just like it's not enough for me as a Presbyterian with one hand, and I wanted to say that at GA, but I couldn't, we provide resources through the Presbyterian Hunger Program to support communities being affected by climate change, but in the other hand, we still put our offering money in fossil fuel companies and we don't divest fully. So there is a contradiction here that we need to fight against and really can't be cold and hot at the same time, right? So for all of that, I'm very excited about the EMV02, the Investing in a Green Future that passed. I think it provides a lot of that type of conversation that we need to have as churches, and I'm looking forward for God to provide people to create those study guides and support these small congregations that are feeling challenged and threatened by many of the overtures we passed. But they're also part of our church, and there are people that care there. So anyway, I'm just like you said, Bruce, the work is just beginning. So let's keep working and see where the Spirit leads us. So thank you.
Nettie, last year you got the William Gibson Award from Presbyterians for Earth Care. William Gibson, probably 40 years ago, wrote a resource calling on Presbyterians to have a simpler lifestyle. And he did this in part because that's part of our Reformed tradition. So if we take our tradition seriously, we will be cutting back on the extravagance of our lifestyle. At the same time, I think our lifestyle is probably comparable to people in Scotland, where historically a few Presbyterians came from. Scotland, with its wind energy, has been able to go totally sustainable. So, it is possible for modern industrialized countries to have a lifestyle that is not totally simple, but they can do it. But there's also an issue that comes out of the COP26, which you were part of, is the issue of damage and loss. For all of these countries that have already felt the impact of climate change and have not been the ones who have contributed to it nearly to the scale of the United States and some European countries, we have a moral obligation to do things that help them to really, compensate for the damage we have caused to them and to generations all over the earth. I mean, it is complicated, it is prophetic, but it's what the church is called to be doing. Really appreciate your. So let's open it up. What questions or comments do other people have? If you raise your hand in the reactions, if you raise your hand, you will be at the top of the screen and we will see you. Jennifer Houston.
Well, listening to Nettie mention that the young people were voting in a certain way, but didn't, well, voicing in a certain way, but didn't have vote. I was wondering if the young people are encouraged. There's 100 people on this
We actually
webinar.
had
If they're
somebody,
encouraged, if they're encouraged to be on their church's session, that's a way to get vote.
we also had a YAD who was at the General Assembly. I think in the chat said they weren't being recognized as well as they could have from the moderators. Daniel, there you are from Olympia. Give us a young adult perspective, Daniel.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Daniel Heron from Olympia Presbytery. And yeah, I was a YAD at this GA and in 2018. And there was a lot of discussion in my YAD group and my cohort about, trying to serve on session and become a ruling elder, to be able to, show up on in our local churches, but also in our presbyteries and at GA as a commissioner. But it's really difficult for young people. A lot of churches don't want to bring younger people onto sessions for a lot of reasons, but it's also difficult because a lot of people my age are in college or in really transitional places in life, and settling down with a church and making a 2 to 3 year contract or a commitment with the church is just really difficult. So I think we have to find ways to lighten the load, maybe, of ways young people can serve and make their voices heard. Because I know that on the overtures that we heard, there was a lot of conversation, a lot of people wanting to speak, and a lot of young people wanting to get some of these things passed. And it was kind of disappointing that not all the voices got heard. Partially, I think it's because of the virtual format. But
we also didn't have a full slate of young adult advisory delegates. And again, part of that was because of the time. It took a lot of commitment from all the commissioners and advisory delegates to go to this GA. It was a longer time period than past GAs. So you had to give up work, money, all kinds of things to be part of it. I wonder, though, a lot of our churches have had meetings on Zoom, if it would be possible. I know we have a deacon in our church who lives 3 hours away from the church, but is very active in Zoom in our church and participates in meetings by Zoom. And maybe some of those college students could Zoom into a session meeting or Zoom into a committee meeting of the session too. Just to let you know, program-wise, we're planning a webinar, I'm hoping in the next couple of months, by a Presbyterian minister who has worked on a book looking at climate change from a faith perspective for how it's impacting children and youth. And that'll be another free webinar that's coming up. Thank you very much for that. Earl, did you have something you wanted to?
Yes, thank you. I'm a member of a group called the Presbyterian Action Team. It's a community citizens climate lobby affiliate. And our group just strongly feels we need to have a tax on carbon and attack the consumption side of fossil fuels. We have to get the consumption down, and the most efficient way to do it is to have a price on carbon. So I understand it was included in one of the overtures that was accepted at the General Assembly. So we're grateful for that, and I'd just like to say divestment is good, but it really doesn't affect consumption that strongly. So a tax on carbon.
That carbon tax has actually been approved by, I think, the last 2 General Assemblies. but like a lot of policies, we got to work on it. So there, if you go back to PC Biz and just type in carbon tax, you'll see the actual statements there
Okay.
of the denomination. But we need to join with the advocacy groups to further that. Thank you for
Thank
highlighting
you.
that. Carol, did you have something you'd like to share or question about?
Yeah, I've been thinking about the young adults, and I really agree with Kathy about not just offering strategy, but maybe even at the presbytery level or even church level, offering to meet with young adults who care about these issues and mentor them into engagement. One of the things I worry about a lot is that young adults really do care about this, and if they don't see the church caring about it, they're just going to be gone. They're not going to stay if the church keeps
Well, I
basically ignoring them.
I think it's a great point. The church I served in Delaware had 180 solar panels, and that attracted families with young children. We even had graduate students joining the church, which is the toughest niche of demographics to have join the church. If they see the church committed to making a difference in the world, that will attract not only young people, but also people across the age spectrum. But I agree
Right.
with you. We need to show the relevancy of the church. And the greatest moral issue of the day is climate change. So we need to help them. And we need to
Um,
empower them.
The
Pete, I will
Earth
tell you,
Charter, sorry, just one more thing. Earth Charter Indiana has been doing brilliant work with children, fifth graders especially, all over the state. They have climate camp, and they teach the kids not only all the stuff about climate issues and how to get better at doing it, participating, but they teach them how to lobby. And they actually go to their local governments and lobby for climate resolutions, which they've been able to get in many places, as well as specific things like visiting restaurants and talking them into stopping using things like plastic straws. It's boy, those kids are going to be great activists for the rest of their lives. And I mean, they have a lot on their website if you look it up.
that's good.
Earth Charter Indiana.
I think we need to highlight these around the country. We did do a webinar on this last summer, but it's a continuing thing we need to work on to empower young people. I was pleased last year PEC had a intern as part of our staff who was a seminary student. And I'm hoping we can do that in future years as well, and maybe get to the point that we will have a volunteer in mission, a mission volunteer person who could do a year, and Mindy would have all the help she needs in her work as well. Other questions or comments? If you're done, please unraise your hand. Andrew, how about you? I am hoping at some point we will hear from a member of PEC who helped with one of the overtures, Jenny Holmes, with the 30 by 30. We are developing a web page on that and hope to have a webinar on that soon. But let's go to see Vaughn. You want to share something?
Well,
Thanks.
wait a minute. Okay.
Vaughn.
I put in chat that I just got through with the Summer Institute on Climate Change Education, and it was sponsored by Climate Generation and NOAA's Climate Program Office. But the way I found out about that was through the Presbyterian Church training, and that was for a climate advocate. So I thought that was really interesting because there's a lot of intersectionality that's going on now with climate change, climate education. And part of what happened out of this institute, and I'd already known about it, but I'd signed up officially, is to be part of the educational standards for meaningful watershed education. That's part of Maryland's, and I believe Virginia and New Jersey's, educational standards, that field experience and learning. But I think somehow we ought to put that into our educational component for for church, Sunday school, and studies, that we need to have a climate change, climate science, and climate environmental justice, because there's now that component of environmental justice, of environmental equity, that has become, I just was on a NOAA seminar, and they are putting that into sustainability office mandates. Does that make sense to you? There's like Office of Sustainability, Los Angeles Metro Office, City of Houston, San Mateo County, California. And that's just because I know them off the top of my head. But that, I think it's already there, but I think we really, the speaking to what these kids and what the young adults are most concerned about is the climate crisis. It affects them. I mean, it's their future. And we're just like blasting past these IPCC numbers. We're not going to make the first goal. And when you start looking at what's going on, and then you look at NOAA webinars that tell you what's going on, the data, it's this extreme weather and all these perturbations, we're already in it. It's just going to become more widespread and more catastrophic. And 40% of the world's population will live within 10 meters of sea level. That was my thesis in college. Not that, but Barrier Island migration. But the point is, globally, this is what we are addressing as humans. And we as a church do have a strong science and addressing climate and environmental issues faith stance, in contrast to some other denominations and churches. So I think we are great. I love it. But I just wanted to say that there's things going on like that. And so anyway, that's all. I know this is like a short thing, so I just wanted to say that.
It is a short thing. And I think you're preaching to the choir as far as people understanding this. I'd love for you to put in the chat some of the examples that you lifted up so that people will have those. We are saving the chat and we want to work on that. Somebody just asked in the chat, are we finishing at 8 o'clock? We will finish close to 8 o'clock as far as the recording goes. Those that are interested are invited to continue conversations and sharing. I do want to mention that we are working on a variety of upcoming programs and webinars, and we would welcome your suggestions. We would welcome your giving us speakers. We welcome your suggestions for topics. If you want to be on the program committee, Mindy, they're meeting next week, is that right? So we
yeah, next Saturday.
Next Saturday. So
yeah.
if you want to help design webinars, reach out to Mindy and she'll get you on the list for that. Are there other key points, people? We all understand the severity of the climate issue and the need for the church to be acting. Are there specific questions or Andrew, you have your hand up there for a while. What's your question?
Just to step off of the high mountain and get down to the basics. How about churches renting hybrid school buses, putting a sign on the side so the name of the school is covered with the name of the Presbyterian church or the church in the neighborhood, and then we deliver people to many churches, the Baptists, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, whatever. And we at least do that once a month, give people an opportunity to share a meal and talk, because one of the websites that I love is Make America Dinner Again. Just getting people together face to face it's just so much more powerful, I found, than the Zooms.
Thank you. Other questions or comments or things people would like to share this evening? I will tell you, PEC wants to get representatives in every presbytery to resource the churches in those presbyteries. And if you want to be part of that effort, let us know. If you have a pen and paper, I'd ask you to write down the dates June 28th, 2024. That's June 28th, 2024 to July 5th, 2024. That's June 28th, 2024 to July 5th, 2024. Put that in your personal date book because you will be planning to be the commissioner to Salt Lake City General Assembly. We need you there. We need people committed to the environment to offer their voice, their experience, and insights to the national governing body of our church. There were some good things that came out of General Assembly. More could have happened if we had more people who were on committees and just vocally at the plenary. Nettie did a fantastic job on taking on some misguided additions to the Investing in the Green Future report, but there could have been even more. There could have been creative ideas. Like Investing in the Green Future talks about charging stations. How about we try to have charging stations for electric vehicles at every church that it's viable to do? A great way to encourage people to have electric vehicles. There's so many different things we need to be doing. And the economic justice, I'd love for us to have a webinar on capitalism and climate change because we should not be accepting the status quo. Any questions or comments?
Yes, my problem is, how do I get my information on the chat? I've written a note. Now, how do I get it on the chat?
You go down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where it says chat.
Yes.
You click that and you say everyone. And then you put it in there and hit return, and it's part of the chat.
Well, okay. That doesn't seem to be working.
Well, if not, email Mindy and she can add it later to the chat discussion.
Okay, well.
We welcome your input. I would also, this is something Sue Smith might like to, we talked to COGA, the Committee on the Office of the General Assembly, and lift the rule on restricting the length of reports. The Investing in the Green Future was a wonderful report, but they left out stuff because they were word limited. That has not been the case in the past. That should not be the case in the future.
Bruce, that is not COGA. That is the stated clerk's decision. And he has made the decision that he's keeping the report word count down.
Then we will overrule him either through COGA or through the General Assembly.
You can't overrule him.
I can overrule him at the General Assembly.
They passed a standing rule this time that put it more into words.
All right. Well, we'll work on that one way. We are church reformed and reforming still, so we'll see what we can do on that score. I'd also like it when an overture advocate or a report author has presented a report and the committee is amending it, that person be entitled to be able to respond to it. So that, for example, somebody in a back room advocates for fracking, and those who prepared a report over a period of time take a counter view. I want the commissioners to be informed and hear both sides. And that was not possible this time around. It was also inappropriate for certain people to have access to the commissioners when others didn't. You know, we should have good standards for everyone. Other questions or comments? Any last words from our presenters?
I think we have a hand up. Roth, did you have your hand up? You're muted.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I did
Yes,
have
we
a
can.
question. Yeah, I'm speaking to you from Washburn, Wisconsin on Lake Superior. And I belong to the Ashland United Presbyterian Congregationalist Church and serving on the Earth Care Committee there. So, and we had our annual Lake Superior service just last Saturday, and which is beautiful, and it's a wonderful chance to get together. One thing that occurs to me concerning, I guess I want to speak on how to better involve young people, and for that matter, elderly people and all people on these local and regional environmental and developmental matters. So my question concerns, one thing I've noticed is there is a reticence to really engage the conversation because as another fellow member of our Earth Care Committee says, well, that's politics. So there seems to be, excuse me, there seems to be this reticence is a good word for it, sort of making a division. And I understand that, you know, there's the civic arena and there's the church. But my concern really is how to bring up these issues as we're standing there on the shores of Gitche Gumee, Lake Superior, for example. It's polluted. Chequamegon Bay is polluted, as beautiful as it is. And these are things that don't generally get brought up in a church gathering. So nonetheless, it's important, and there are issues that could be addressed, watershed issues, the coal plant we have there, and other pollutants, acid rain, all these issues we could be discussing. But well, I mean, for lack of, and I'll try to ask the question here: how do we really bridge this gap between the general community and its civic arena and the church, and how do we get past this and bring people from the civic arena, such as myself and others, into the church, so it becomes like a really two-way dialogue between the people who are really involved in our community on an environmental, developmental issues, and when we go in the church, that we don't just sit there and just have a one-way conversation directed from a few people to the rest of us in the church, who frankly, most people in my church, I think, were pretty clueless regarding the divestment issues, and generally what our church is doing for Earth Care. So I think that's a really good question. How do we involve more, and how do we get young people and everybody more involved? And I just throw that out there. It's kind of,
If you would put your email in the chat, I'll be happy to shoot you some resources the church has developed on a variety of these topics. I can't do justice to your difficult question in just a few moments when people are in the process of leaving, but I hear the concern you're raising. It's not a new one, but at the same time, the good news is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are some good, helpful resources out there.
great.
Foundational, I would say, is the church proclaims Jesus is Lord. And to say Jesus is Lord means the whole of life should be impacted by our Christian faith, including what sometimes is labeled political. Presbyterians historically have not shied away from being engaged in the political realm because they understand that's a way of faithfully serving God. We also understand that good people of faith may differ. So sometimes I'll get my way, sometimes you'll get your way, but it doesn't mean we stifle the conversations or the actions because we're concerned that somebody might take offense. You know, none of us get our way all the time. We desperately, desperately need to involve young people, and that means hearing their voices, listening to their ideas. Anyway, I can send you a variety of stuff that you might find helpful. I can tell you the churches I have been involved in, as they struggle with significant issues going on in the community and the world, end up attracting people. And that's what we're about.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments? All right. Stay tuned. Mindy, you want to plug next week's webinar? Next Tuesday night, right? We have
It's next Tuesday night. If you go to our homepage, it links to it. I'm actually blanking out on the exact title.
Well, it's on resilience in part.
Yep, it's about resilience.
So
you can go to our homepage. It links to the sign up and gives you more details.
So we have a spiritual director who's going to talk about those things that can contribute to helping us be nurtured for the long haul, because this is hard work and we need to keep working at it. And so she's doing a program next Tuesday evening, and you're all invited back to that one. And it is on the homepage for PEC. Are there other questions or comments people have? Well, oh, yes, sir. You had your hand up raised again there?
Yeah, that very quickly. If we don't do advocacy, forget the education. There's got to be a praxis. And so we do great on education, but be in the public sphere, go to the city commission, be at the state legislature. You know, I put on the chat there an interfaith group, you know, and people are surprised and pleased to find out a religious group is present. It's not difficult. It can be done and you become very public. So
Well,
I'm
and
encouraged.
the word education, the origins of the word means being led out. So we
Right.
gain knowledge, but then we act on it. So,
That's right.
you know, we have the knowledge. The planet desperately needs us to change our ways.
I think it's a praxis that needs to occur. So.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Well, I hope you all get a good night's rest tonight because there's a lot of work to be done. Blessings on you all. Thank you very much. Again, this will be posted in a few days on YouTube. We will send you an email to the link. Your comments in the chat will also be saved. And PEC, Presbyterian Service Care, is here to serve. So if you want resources, speakers, ideas, whatever, reach out to us and we will try to do all that we can to help you because we're all in this together and we together can truly make a difference. God bless you all. Thank you.
Blessings. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all. Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ted. Wonderful from Peru. Thank you. I see Jenny Holmes there, but I never saw a hand raise.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Added some things to the chat, I think, so.
Good, excellent. Have a good night. Thank you, Fawn, for your ideas.
Thank you.
Give me your email, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you are saving the chat, right, Mindy?
Everything gets saved automatically, all the parts.
For better or worse.
That's right.
Did you stop the recording?
I can right now.